convenience has really kind of destroyed our world in so many different ways. And as a business owner, it makes me feel conflicted, Sarah, because I'm like, on the one hand, I'm like, yay, capitalism. Like, I want these opportunities. And on the other hand, I'm like, planet's destroyed. Humans' attention span is destroyed. Our ability to be kind to one another, destroyed. It's really pretty terrifying.
Welcome to Unreasonable Autonomy. My name is Sarah Grace. This is the podcast for entrepreneurs and innovators who refuse to settle. Here we dive deep into raw, real conversations with boundary pushers who have pursued seemingly impossible ideas and yet have achieved unreasonable results, whether that's in their faith, relationships, health, politics, yes, even business. All of those conversations are happening right here, right now. So let's buckle up because this isn't about playing it safe. Unreasonable ideas, unstoppable results. Let's go. Thrilled to be welcoming Lauren Golden to the podcast. Lauren Golden is an award-winning entrepreneur, best-selling author, speaker, and coach whose mission is to help 1 million women take their next step of courageous action. From overwhelmed mom with loads of personal debt to multi-million-dollar lifestyle entrepreneur, Lauren's own transparency and resilience has inspired women worldwide and helped them pursue a totally awesome life, one step at a time. As founder and CEO of The Free Mama, Lauren has developed programs that have transformed the lives of tens of thousands of women in dozens of countries across 5 continents and altered the trajectory of how moms balance family and work. She is a dynamic and sought-after speaker who shares her strategies to make big, bold shifts in life and business, making her a popular choice for events, sharing the stage with the likes of Tony Robbins, Russell Brunson, and Trent Shelton. Let's chat. All right. Welcome back to the podcast. Sarah here. And wow, a dear friend is across from me. This is Lauren Golden. Hello.
Hello.
We've already had kind of a good conversation so far. And so it's like, let's catch everybody up. So let me introduce a couple of things that I want you to know about Lauren Golden. And I would say my first experience with meeting you was being scared to sit by you at a marketing event, right?
Am I scary? That's not what we're going for.
Well, you're actually we'll dive into that in just a hot second. But it was like, we have a mutual friend that had saved all these seats, and like the seat that was available was next to the Lauren Golden. And I was like, don't be a weirdo, don't be a fangirl, whatever it was. And we were at this great marketing event. And it was so fabulous to meet you there, because now that I've known you for a couple of years on more of a personal level, the reason I really wanted to dive into you deep about some really fun topics, are we excited? It's going to be great.
I'm totally excited.
Was the word I come to is you're unapologetic. Right? You're unapologetic. And that doesn't come from just flightiness or just picking and choosing opinions or whatever. You have been so shaped by the experiences in your family, in your marriage, in travel, in, yes, a robust business, and all of these things. And I just love that you're unapologetic about what you believe and what you stand for. And you also allow those experiences to reshape you. So I'm really excited to dive into a couple of things and your experiences and talk about some cool stuff. But for those who don't know you, you are the owner, operator, all the things behind The Free Mama and some really incredible things there. Can you just catch us up on what started Free Mama so people know your business background, but also like what your life is looking like now? Because there's been some changes that I'm excited to dive even further with you.
Always changes, which kind of goes to your introduction. So thank you, first of all, for having me. It's always interesting to see how other people see you and to pair that up with maybe how you see yourself. Sure. And that might be one of the things that I'm most proud of is I feel like you nailed me. Like that's also how I see myself. And it is absolutely influenced by my experiences. And so I am unapologetic about my values and about who I am because I'm always living my values. But I am not someone, because I'm sure we all know more than a few people like this, who thinks I know everything or that my opinions on certain topics, especially the taboo ones, the religion, the politics, whatever, I don't think I'm right all the time. I just know who I am and I bring that to everything that I do. So that's how I see myself. And I heard some of that in how you see me too. So that I will take as a compliment. My name is Lauren Golden. I'm the founder of The Free Mama. And how that started is that I've actually now been self-employed for 10 years. So for 10 years, I have been sharpening the tools in the tool belt of how to make money by myself and keep it and maybe leverage it and maybe invest it. That's included buying homes and assets as a self-employed individual, figuring out insurance as a self-employed individual, because I'm also married to an entrepreneur. So there are many little things that are different from the more in the box or traditional way of doing life that we have learned how to navigate over the last decade. And every now and again, there's something new and exciting we have to figure out. And something you should know about me is that that is not in alignment with who I used to be. 13 years ago, I became a mom for the first time. My daughter will turn 13 here in a couple months. So through the pregnancy, through the whatever, and I really had to reconcile my childhood truth, which was that I had a self-employed dad, so a bad dad who ran a business, which I got to see the stress, I got to see the blood, sweat, and tears, I got to see the hard work and the late nights, but I also noticed that he never missed a dance recital, never missed a soccer game, never ever was not there for me and my sister when we needed it. So that was very influential in what would become my adult life. But I also grew up with a stay-at-home mom. Yeah.
Okay. That was going to be my question.
Yes.
And do you feel like as a young person, when you think about your dad, you were aware very early on that he wasn't missing stuff and that like other kids' dads were? Like you noticed it early on?
Probably, but probably maybe subconsciously. I don't know. My dad is like my hero. Like my dad, I love my dad so much. I was always a daddy's girl. And so I think what I was aware of, to answer your question, is I was aware that my parents were really great partners in everything I needed as a child. And I recognize what a gift that is, because I see things all the time now about parenting, and maybe we'll get into this in our conversation today, but I see things all the time now of like, well, we're all just trying to do better than our parents. I'm just trying to keep up with my parents. If I could be half of who my parents were in their marriage, as individuals, in everything, like I feel like the bar was set so high for me that if anything, I have a complex about trying to keep up with who my parents are. So I very much have them on a pedestal. They're wonderful people, not without flaws, like all of us. There are quirky things where I'm like, all right, this holiday's been fun, but I gotta go. Like, those things still happen. But my mom stayed home is the long story short. And so I also, while I knew that I had a very available dad, I also knew that I had a very, very available mother, and created a narrative that nobody ever said to me out loud, Sarah, but the narrative was like, good mothers stay home with their kids. And by the time I became able to have Daphne, it took us a while to get pregnant. That's my oldest, just turning 13. I felt like, oh my gosh, I have to go back to work. Like we already had a mortgage. I was young, so we did not have a lot of money. We did not have it all figured out by the time we decided to become parents. We kind of grew up with our first kid. And so that was really the origin story of where the Free Mama came from. Was my first draft of this was having to reconcile being a working mom. Now, the good news is very quickly after going back from my unpaid maternity leave, which is a conversation for another day, and a battle that I'm not fighting in my life, but yay for those of you who are fighting that battle. I reconciled very quickly that I actually love to work. I love to work. I love being a working mom. But by the time my son was born 2 years later, so they're exactly 2 years apart, I felt like a failure everywhere. I felt like I was failing at work. I felt like I was failing as a wife. I definitely was failing as a wife at that time. If you have two kids somewhat close together, like you just know, like dad's last. I have these two teeny tiny humans who need me physically for everything. And I felt like I was failing as a mom because I was dropping them off. Somebody else was raising them every day. I had maybe 2 hours at night and I'm, washing bottles and pumping and trying to nurse and doing the bedtime thing and the bath thing. And then that was it. And then I'm exhausted and I have nothing left to give anybody else, not myself, not my husband, nobody. So I felt like I was failing. So very quickly, I always say, like, if you've ever Googled how to make money from home, 2014 for me, that whole year pretty much was the year that I tried all the things. I watched every webinar on the internet. I tried network marketing. I tried secret shopping. I tried those little survey scam things that you can do to make like 4 cents if you qualify. Like I did everything. And it wasn't until I learned more about the world of freelancing that I realized how accessible this opportunity to create your own career online with nothing but a computer and internet was available to me. I had no idea. So I started as a social media manager. We'll flash forward. There's many, many life events, both beautiful and completely tragic, that happened during this time. But to get to the beginning of the Free Mama is after a few years of freelancing, I successfully quit my job, more than replaced my salary. I brought my kids home. I was working half the hours that I was at a full-time job. My family actually relocated during this time for a job for my husband, and I did it all again. Like I kind of like had to start over again when we moved to Texas because I was working with a lot of local businesses. Now, serendipity happened at this point in my story, Sarah, and that my first client that I got when we moved to Texas was a business coach. Now, before this, I had never heard of coaching. I did not, it was a world, I had no idea that this existed. I learned about ClickFunnels, which is what brought us together through sort of that world. And I learned how to do Facebook ads, build funnels, put together email campaigns, all of these things working for this business coach, which around this same time, I started getting what I will call my second of many sort of callings. I know you are a woman of faith, so you would call it God. I usually go with a more general universe, but whatever your divine spirit, power, energy, whatever you believe, something was talking to me and I heard it loud and clear. And it was saying, this wasn't about you. And the way that I interpreted that voice was that I had learned to do this really cool thing, but I was not the only woman on this planet that needed that skill set. And I fought it and I resisted this for a very long time. I had a lot of doubts. I had a lot of fears, a lot. I was intimidated by other people I was seeing. Like, when you kind of like, you start, maybe you're going and looking at a certain car and then you see that car everywhere. Like you're thinking about getting pregnant and then everyone's pregnant. It was like, I barely knew this world existed. And then all of a sudden it was all I saw everywhere. And so I was so scared to start. But 8 years ago this fall, so fall of 2017, I launched the Free Mama movement with the mission to make sure that no mother had to choose between family, being home with their kids, raising them, being available the way they wanted to, and financial stability. How are we going to provide for this life? And that's where it came from. The mission has never changed. The offers have changed a lot. My P&L sheet has changed a lot. Lots of things have changed over the years within that, but everything we do is still in alignment with that original vision of equipping women with the skills and tools that they need to start an online business, because I believe that that is one of the greatest ways that we can have freedom in this really weird, cool, sometimes scary, sometimes super awesome time that we're living in, where we can be on different sides of the country having a conversation in real time, which is pretty cool.
Like, I am just absolutely convinced, like, it is women's time right now. All the tools have been laid in front of us to have the most of what we feel so pulled to do, right? Mothering, building, serving, all of those things. It's just all at our disposal. And I love so much that entire story. And I just want to make a connection here that I'm so fascinated by. You were talking about how, look, I was failing as a wife, right? And as a human in 2014, when that second baby came, right? And all of a sudden my heart like starts to beat a little bit because I'm like, oh, been there. I feel that. And some of our listeners are there. I don't know. But what's so interesting is, in retrospect, the thing that helped launch the Free Mama was this idea of this isn't about you. And what's interesting is that may have still been the same message you were carrying in 2014, but in a less productive way. Like, this isn't about me. Like, this is all about everyone else being moved to exhaustion. Go.
So fascinating. But what I'm thinking is that's the difference between sort of a knowing and a thought.
Yes.
Because I could have had that thought in 2014, and maybe I did, right? That self-sacrifice, that I don't have time for anything. I can't do anything for myself, which, by the way, is a lot of the women that I serve. But those are thoughts, and our thoughts are not reliable. Most of our thoughts are not even true. We know scientifically our thoughts have a negativity bias, which doesn't that fit in? This was not a thought. This was words from someone else that I could hear, which I realize every time I tell this story, if that's not how you receive stuff, it probably sounds crazy. And I've actually had this voice several times in my life, not daily, not annually, but at the big pivotal moments that I can look back in hindsight and track, I get this download, is how I would call it. And so I hear you that the phrase can be the same, the interpretation can be different, but it's actually the source in my life experience that makes it not even close to the same experience.
Amen, amen, amen. And let me push further when you said,
Yeah.
I serve a lot of these women that are the
Mm-hmm.
2014 thought type of people that I was back then.
Yep.
I'm just going to be blunt. Touching that kind of mindset with a 10, like I don't want to touch it with a 100-foot pole. Like that is so
I do. Oh, I do. That's what
I know. And that's why you're here. And that's why you're great at it and I do it different, right? But like how I think it is the most important work on earth that you are doing, right?
Oh,
the most
that's sweet.
important core people that if you can heal, help, inspire, help those people be certain, those women, those moms, like that's life changing. That's world changing because they're impacting families and marriages and neighborhoods and congregations and all these things. It is the most noble work on earth. How do you not get drained by helping people?
Well,
right?
I don't get drained, actually. I had to process that, I think, for a second. So I'm not sure what my facial reaction was. I don't get drained. I do get frustrated sometimes. There are absolutely women I've worked with, and I say this with love, that make me want to bang my head against the wall because I can't do it for them. I can't make them see what I see. I can't change their mind. All I do in my coaching work, which so much of it has just accidentally, coincidentally, like not with any sort of design on my part, really yielded to the mindset side. You can give anybody all the business tools in the world, but if their head is not in a place of belief, then they're not going to pursue it. They will resist, delay, avoid, procrastinate, people please, give into, there's a million. I literally gave a workshop this week and I had an entire page and I'm like, we were talking about living our best day life. And I'm like, oh, interesting. None of you asked for these things. And yet many of you were spending hours of your day doing these things. And so all I do, Sarah, is equip them with tools, things I've learned either through personal experience, research I've done, things like that, and sort of develop these conversations to sort of work through. But it takes time. And I think, it's no different. Our brain is like any other muscle. And so to have the accountability and support to work through it, so I don't get drained because I have really healthy boundaries. I have healthy emotional boundaries. I have healthy, my physical space. I have healthy, time boundaries in terms of the energy that I'm putting into my work versus that I pour into myself. None of these skills, by the way, did I have developed it in 2014, Lauren.
Sure.
This is today, which means we can change, we can evolve, we can grow, we can do these things. There's hope for all of us. So yeah, that was an interesting word choice because the more I think about it, I don't get drained. I love it. It's actually one of my favorite things that I show up and do is fulfillment. That is, if I could choose one thing to do, that is what I would do.
Yes.
But I absolutely get frustrated because everybody's working at their own pace with their own backlog and baggage and stories. And it's exciting when we see the breakthrough, but it is frustrating when it's like, okay, we're talking about this again. And I have had to fire clients, not many over the years at all, but some I've had to fire, especially from certain programs where you see it leak into other things. And I'm thinking of one woman in particular, which clearly I'm not going to share the specifics of this story. But what I will tell you about her is when I let her go from a program, I told her, and I don't know if she heard me or felt me, but I meant it, and I still mean it today. I said, I hope that this is the wake-up call that changes everything for you and that you will go find, I can no longer be the one to support you in this capacity, right? It's not working. But my hope is that once you're done being pissed off at me or upset or whatever, like I can handle that. Again, I've got the emotional boundary in place, but I hope, because sometimes we need like a little kick in the tail to wake up. And so I hope that person realized, wow, that might have been a bigger problem than I was even aware of and can do something about it. Because I really do believe we can all change. But yeah, so I don't get sick of it, but I do enact my boundary when I need it.
Yeah. And I love that you don't get sick of it and you don't necessarily get drained. You get frustrated through that process, but you still hold true that this is an expectation that you are going to learn and you're going to grow and you're going to be involved and you're going to lift and you're going to do. I've sat in your communities. I have taught in your communities and never have I had such a community where after it's over, you get 45 DMs. That was amazing. Thank you. Like, who takes the time? I'm like,
They're taught that.
It's very much top down leadership that they've seen that example of gratitude and pointing out strengths. And it's such a warm, beautiful thing that you've built. And I want to back up when you talk about that woman that you had to let go and you hope that it serves her. Has that come full circle yet for her? Has she?
I would have to go check. Again, I'm big on boundaries. So sometimes that looks like just removing visual reminders. So I would have to check. That's an interesting question. And now it's been a while, but we'll have to be determined. I'll just give a little shout out because sometimes I harp on my mom. I love my mom. Sometimes I harp on her. The messages that you received, that is 1000% an influence from my mom. We always wrote notes after the holidays. Even it's like, I remember rolling my mom, it's your mom. Like, I'm going to see her next week. Like, it's grandma. That's so, and she was old school like that and classy. And now I do that with my kids. My kids always sit and write thank you notes every year. My sister's like, your kids don't have to do this. Like, I'm throwing it in the trash. I'm like, I don't care what you do with it. It's not about, I'm like, I want them to learn that when someone does something for you, that there is an energetic exchange that needs to happen in return. And so we say thank you for that. And so that is a very personal life choice that I absolutely brought into business. And I definitely teach it as this is an expectation. This is how we show up when someone comes to serve us. You might not have the same thing to give back, but I'm just really big on mutual respect and energy exchanges. And it's interesting. It's kind of like your question of did that come back around? I don't know. I'll have to go check on that, but it's kind of the same concept, right? Of was there this energetic loop that maybe happened? And maybe it won't be the obvious way that I hoped for her, but maybe it'll be in the form of somebody else who wasn't working with someone else comes into my world, and maybe I'm able to be the voice that gets through to that person. There's so many ways it can happen. Yes. But anyway, so shout out to Pam. She's a great lady and she instilled awesome values.
Sweet Pam. We're going to bring her on next. Let's do that. What was it like to raise Lauren Golden? What was it like?
My God. Well, she's pretty private, but I bet that would be a really good interview if you could get into it. I think the word feisty might come up.
I love this so much. And I'm seeing a pattern of that your certainty has matured, wrong word, let's use it anyway, matured into, your confidence has matured into a way that it is not reliant upon other people or external voices, right? And when
that feels true 99% of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The life fight, right? And what has motherhood brought to the table for you in that realm? I was just reading a book and it talked about sort of this epidemic of mothers only feeling like they are good mothers when their kids are obedient, or when their kids say they are, or when their kids are grateful, or when their kids don't fight. So it's this very I am a good mother on this kind of journey. How have you built or wrestled with confidence and certainty that I am a good mom?
I hate that, what you just said. I resonate with what you read. I feel that. I don't feel that every day. And I don't feel it in a whiplash way that maybe it was written about. But at my core, I feel that. And I'll explain more in a second. I am a good mother. That's the part I'm saying I hate. I don't know if do you know Stephanie Dove Blake?
Yes, I do.
Okay. She's fantastic. Shout out to Stephanie. We love Stephanie. She'd be a great guest for the show, by the way. She has a podcast where she is also talking about motherhood type things. And I remember I was on my year RV trip and I did not do very many speaking engagements. I had a pretty I'm living in an RV with 3 kids, a husband, and 2 pets, and traveling. I was on lockdown. But Stephanie asked me, and I was like, I will do anything for you. So we had this conversation, and it was pretty raw, and we got into the parenting thing. And I think that was one of her very last questions, was something about I don't know if she asked me to say it. I don't know I don't recall. Now I'm going to have to go listen to it, Sarah. But it was something, and I was triggered. I'm I am not saying that. I am a lady of integrity, and I cannot sit here without tearing up and being I am such a good mom. Now let's go back to what you were reading in the book. There are moments in life where I know that I am crushing it. I can feel them. I don't know if you can too. My daughter will kill me, but we'll just, we already said she's 12 going on 13. There's something that happens at that time in a lady's life typically. And that thing happened this past year. And several times I had that moment of like, I am crushing it. She was prepared. She knew what to do. She was open in communication with me, which like for some parents might be like, okay, that was not my dynamic with my mom. We were I already said she's very private. And so what can unfortunately happen, and again, I love, so now we're going to harp on her after we complimented her, but this is just my reality as a child. There was shame in certain things because it was like, we don't talk about that. Like, we're not going to talk a lot about these certain topics. And when you're a kid and you're not talking about it, like, so these were my stories. My mom didn't plant these stories, but she chose certain actions that led me to create a certain story that I very actively, from a very young age of my kids, wanted to rewrite. Very intentionally, they were things I was certain of. And that was one of them, is any stigma around body stuff, sexual stuff, any of that. Like, I wanted it to be open. I wanted it to be casual. I'm sure there will be discomfort on my part and my kids' part. I've had some hilarious conversations, by the way, with my 10-year-old son who would rather talk to me than his dad. But I'm also like, I had no brothers and I am not a boy. So we have some really funny conversations with each other where it's like, let me go out. We're just going to figure it out together. Like, it's amazing. But there are things like that where I'm like, I feel awesome as a parent because my kids are talking to me. And I just want my kids to know that they can talk to me. I know my children know I love them. I know my children know I love them. And that makes me feel like a good mom. But on a daily basis, to be like, I'm a great mom. Like, there are just days where like that will shock my nervous system because I yelled at them that day, or they ticked me off and I had to have a consequence that didn't feel great, or something got taken away that affected everybody. And now I'm ticked off because I lost the thing because you lost. Like, so there are many moments in reminding myself that I am raising future adults that do not feel good. They do not feel intuitive. They do not, and I will also say this, you are aware of this, but for those of you listening, we had some serious mental health concerns with one of my kiddos, and it required a lot of therapy, and not like the talk therapy, like a little more immersive. And most of what we learned during this year of my life went against my being. It was not intuitive. We think as women, like we're the nurturers, we're whatever. Well, a lot of that nurturing was making her problems worse. And so I had to learn a lot. We talked about tools in business and tools in mindset. I had to learn tools from psychology. And now, by the way, we are thriving. She is a delight. She is fantastic. She is truly growing up, as we've already established with her biology. And she is helpful every day. She'll come up to me. She's like, I'm your favorite now, right? And like, I am not playing this game, but like, she even knows she's doing well and she knows she's showing up in life. But there were things that made me feel not like a good mom, that when I learned that was natural to me, but it was hurting my child, that didn't make me feel like a good mom. That made me feel ill-equipped. It made me feel scared. It made me, frankly, feel really pissed off that these resources aren't more widely available to people and accessible. I mean, I had a lot of feelings. And so this is clearly a very dynamic topic. But yeah, how do I reconcile change and navigate it? The thing is, as a parent, it's constant. I mean, your kids are becoming different people fairly rapidly. It's like as soon as you figure out an age, they're kind of on to the next thing. And so I have things that I feel truly proud of. I think that I am raising good humans, and I know that they know that I love them and that they can come talk to me. And for that, I feel grateful. Just don't make me wear a shirt that says I am a good mom. I'll freak out. It's too much.
Put that in the notes. Send Lauren a t-shirt with such and such saying.
We have so much growth we can still do.
Stake, right? Burn it at the stake. And I think
it's too much pressure.
So much pressure. And who wants to sit there and track their goodness as a mom on an hour by hour, day by day basis? Like, I would go nuts. And so I actually really love that somewhat of your marker. I mean, you had a principle behind it that like, we're not going to do the shame thing. And okay, here's an element of her growing up that I'm not going to do shamefully, and you had those targets, but also your barometer seems to be, are they talking to me?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And that is a way to gauge confidence versus, Bambi's mom's ears perk up. That's like what I'm thinking about for some reason, but like something's off, like we've got to address. And I think that is a tool. That is a tool that can be hugely valuable. Tell me a little bit about, again, reconciling in your mind the fact that how do I start this? You said that you were upset, ticked, all the things, that the resources your kiddo needed in order to be well were just simply not available. And this is the battle of an entrepreneur is I have something that can change lives. I have something that can heal marriages. I have something that can whatever. And certainly we go through the efforts to exchange money for services and do those things. That's how we grow business. We don't apologize for that. You were in a position to be able to help your kid. What in the world are we supposed to do when economically or location wise, kids cannot get this help? Like, what is our obligation? Financially, or even access?
Yeah,
they live in Louisiana, where I used to live. Like, what do you do?
Well, loaded question. Where my mind goes first is, and I don't have the answers to this, but we have a lot of broken systems in this country, and we don't need to politicize the conversation. I think most of us can just agree about that. The amount of privilege, that's where my anger comes from. I'm also a high D on the disc scale. So that's kind of my passion. My passion, when I'm really passionate, it can sound like I'm mad or angry or upset. And in this case, I am, because the level of privilege that we had as two people who worked from home, who had the financial means, and we still waited a year to be able to get access to the help with the whole time in decline. Yeah, it cost an arm and a leg that we could both be available to go and be there. I mean, privilege is insane of what it took. And I do not have the answers for that at all. All I can say is that, with Daphne, it was really interesting. We don't know for certain, but as her mother, I feel like I know for certain that COVID definitely played a role in what happened and invading her symptoms. And so that is arguably not really preventable. But with a lot of what we have today, we have a lot of mental health challenges, many stemming from how COVID was handled, but also of them because of the way that we're doing things in education, in the healthcare system, with medications instead of nutrition. And this is a soapbox that I have that I feel passionate about, but it's not my life calling to go create the answers. It's more something that I feel like I can leverage the megaphone that I've been given online to make people more aware of these topics. So you will see me share certain things very much. Again, I try to keep it not political, because to me, this should not be a political issue at all, but it is something that's impacting families extraordinarily. And food, for example, was one of the things. Now, there were many tools we needed as parents. So I'm not downplaying this of like, if we would have just given her fruits and vegetables, she would have been fine. That is not fair to the scenario, nor many other people's. And at the same time, nutrition and exercise was prescribed, and it's not being prescribed enough for a lot of the health issues, including mental health, that I think that we have. So, I don't have the answer, Sarah. I wish that I did. I have all of the tools that worked for our family that on one-on-one I've shared with people, because I've been so vulnerable and transparent in the years following what happened. I definitely have people reach out to me from time to time and to be able to give them these things. But the reality is, we were not working with an influencer from Instagram. We were working with an anxiety specialist who went to school and got, the clinical hours and abilities and knowledge and expertise. And that's not saying there is not valuable information on the internet from both medical providers, but also experts. I didn't go to school for business. I didn't go to school for marketing. I'm not a psychologist, and I'm helping people with mindset. So I'm not saying there aren't answers, but it's not as easy as like, this book needs to get out there, this, whatever. Like the system is broken, and the system needs to be rebuilt because it is not fair. It's not. But what it does make me passionate about, Sarah, is the work that I do. I mentioned that I gave a workshop earlier this week, and my first slide was an online business equals freedom. That was the first slide. Why? Because when we have systems that aren't serving us, we have to change the us side of things. And it was that privilege that it is a privilege. We're white, we're straight. I acknowledge all of those things. And also, nobody handed my husband and I a business. Like, those things took years to build the financial resources. If this would have happened when we were young parents, I don't know what we would have done. We didn't have any money. We didn't have, we hadn't built freedom. We both had jobs, low paying jobs. We had insurance that still wouldn't have covered it because our insurance now didn't cover it. So I guess what I would want people to hear is, like, if nobody's going to do it for you, you're going to have to do it. And it is going to be hard, but it's not as hard as we usually make it, if that makes sense. Like, we as humans, so much harder than it has to be. It's going to be hard. You're going to have to do hard work. It is harder to go make a salad than it is to throw something in the microwave that's processed for 2 minutes and then just eat it. Like, it's harder. It takes more time, right? It's easier to go turn on Netflix than it is to go outside and walk for 30 minutes. And it's that whole concept of, like, do you want hard now or do you want hard later? Do you want it to be hard right now in this moment, or do you want to choose the less convenient thing? My husband and I talk about convenience a lot. Convenience has really kind of destroyed our world in so many different ways. That makes me really, and as a business owner, it makes me feel conflicted, Sarah, because I'm like, on the one hand, I'm like, yay, capitalism. Like, I want these opportunities. And on the other hand, I'm like, planet's destroyed. Humans' attention span is destroyed. Our ability to be kind to one another, destroyed. It's like really pretty terrifying. And again, I have no solution. So I hope you weren't positioning me as an expert here. But what I know is I can identify these challenges and I think about them constantly. And the only thing that I have resolved, both whether it's, the mental health thing or how I feel about nutrition or fast fashion, and all I can do is share my opinion on it and hope that if I can give, and not even as a business owner, but just as a human, if I can give insight into, like, one small change I'm making, right? Like, I switched this for this because it's better for me, it's less toxic, and it's better for the environment, and then share that, maybe one other person will pick up that habit and someone else will pick up that habit. So something that's changed in me a lot over probably the last, really since everything with Daphne, so probably the last 3 years, 4 years, I have gone inward a lot. I have focused, I have shifted back of that, kind of not go save the world, but this wasn't about you, and go teach everybody. And the last 3-4 years, I have focused a lot on changing my own habits, my own way of life, how we do things as a family. Like, I've kind of come back home again. I'm sure there will be another blossoming of the flower at some point, but I scaled the business back for Daphne's health. And then my family traveled for a year. And so I kept things very lean. And now I'm in my I bake bread. We cook most of our food, almost everything these days from scratch. I homeschool 2 of my kids. It's wild. It's things I never, ever thought that I would do. And definitely leads to some of that uncertainty that is probably coming out in most of the conversation. And also at this stage of life, it feels good and right and honest for myself, and hopefully helpful, hopefully helpful for other people. And I will end that monologue by sharing, I have even made peace with the fact that if the only people it helps are the people who live in this house with me, that is really cool. And I say that because if you're listening and you've got big dreams, you want to make an impact, you want to go do it. I've done that. And again, I think I will do more, and it is fulfilling and it's beautiful and it's amazing. And I did things in my 30s I never thought I would do in my whole life. And then also there was kind of a coming home of the ego. There was kind of a dying of the ego of how much of that was serving me on sort of an ego level at the same time that it was happening, and that significance. And my sense of significance, especially over the last year, has come home. Because if I am not most significant here, then it's pretty cool that I've coached 8,000 people and have a group of 45,000 people and, spoke on stage with Russell Brunson and Tony Robbins. And again, those things definitely are cool. They're in my bio. They were great for my ego. They are accomplishments that I do not take for granted. I know how many people aspire to those things. And I have to be most significant right here. And that is the season of life that I am in now. And it's been wild ride.
Wild. I have like 99 questions to ask you.
Hit it.
99, I swear. Okay, let's get comfortable here.
No, I'm just kidding. We'll go rapid fire. No.
Yeah, we're going to this is a 10-part series. Welcome, everybody. So, thing I want to ask you about, I might even just work backwards. First, moment of silence for Daphne, who had to grow up while traveling in an RV.
You know what? We had her therapist's blessing. We asked. We almost didn't go because we didn't want to. She had made so much progress. She was doing so great and we didn't want to rock the boat. And she was like, ooh, make her uncomfortable every day for a year? Yes, go do that. And we're like, okay. Yeah, she was pretty ticked off. She was the one going into junior high. So sort of you're taking me away from my friends was her narrative and her narrative alone. But she also now she's my child. I don't homeschool and she goes to an online private school, which we thought was a temporary solution, but it's probably a forever solution. And she loves it. She's thriving because there is no bullying. There is no cattiness. There's no drama. There's no social media. There's no dating. I literally feel like I'm dodging a bullet. It's like we're avoiding middle school altogether. She is in leadership opportunities. And this was a kid who was being bullied basically and crying every day coming home from school. So she is thriving. So yes, moment of silence, but also she's fine.
Amen. Amen. And they'll edit this out. Are you open to sharing what her school is for show notes?
Oh, sure. Yeah. It's Sora. It's called Sora Schools.
Sora Schools. Perfect. Okay. Copyright. I'll put that in the show notes. Brilliant. Okay. So my next question is, and what I want to dive deeper with you is, you talked about this, I have come home to myself. And I'm quite obsessive about this concept because, as you know, I dive very deeply into women's journeys, right? And how women's journeys are different. And that is one of the most distinct differences in heroes versus heroines is that they come home and they come home to themselves and revisit themselves and the people they love and feel more convicted in the people that they left to pursue the journey, necessary form of leaving, whether it's capacity, mental, or whatever. So I'm like super obsessed with this part of your journey and what you're sharing. So my question is that we don't share the same faith necessarily. We do believe in universe and speaking. And a member of my faith, a woman, was speaking about that she loves how women feel so called to bless the world. She goes, I get dozens of calls a day about who can I send blankets to and who can I send food to? Who can I create humanitarian kits for and all that kind of stuff.
I call this heart-centered.
Heart-centered.
Heart-centered. Oh, when women come into my community, I always say they're so heart-centered. Like they just want to go love.
Oh, and that's her feeling. And she did couple it with a new frame, or I would dare say even a warning. Ooh. She said, I love these phone calls and please do not neglect the impact of the people within the four walls of your home. Right? Do you believe in that?
I think if someone, I do now. I not only believe it, I embody it. And I've lately been thinking a lot. When we moved to Texas, it was 2016. I think that's right. So I was pregnant with my youngest. I had found out I was pregnant in between my husband accepting the job and us moving there. So that was scary. Remember, I had to kind of restart my business at this time. We knew nobody. And I joined a mom's group. I met a girl literally on the street who happened to be planted in my life. Her name is Dana, and she is fantastic. And she is a connector. So the first person I met, the first friend I made happened to be a connector. And she ran a mom's group at a church, at a Methodist church in Texas. And again, not practicing religion at the time, but I'm like, I need friends. Like, I know myself. I'm an extrovert. I'm like, I don't know anybody here. I'm a young mom. I have no support system. I'm pregnant. I'm vomiting 10 times a day. I'm trying to run a business from home. My husband's now going to this job. Like, I need this. And remember, I was a working mom with my first 2 kids. So I had never been to a mom's group like that. Working mom, by the way, working moms can't go to mom's groups because they're during the mornings when moms are at work. So like, I had never done that. So I had a little bit of resentment, but I was also like, I need this. It was probably 95% stay-at-home moms. It was like on a Friday at 10. But again, an online business equals freedom. So I could go, I could make the time to go. And there was like a real estate agent and a couple other people maybe with part-time jobs, but for the most part, they all stayed home. And so much of the curriculum, I was there for the social aspect. Like, yes, I could take the other stuff. You can always learn. We would always do like a parenting curriculum or something like that. But I'm there for friends. But I would always download it. I love to remember, I don't think I know everything. I'm always changing I can sit and talk to anybody. You want to talk controversy? I was a political science major and a theology minor in college. I want to hear your opinion, man. I want to hear what everybody has to say about everything. And what cracks me up is you're all wrong and you're all right at the same time. Like, I love it. So like the 2 most controversial things. Oh yeah, I took politics and religion. That's what I took. I love it.
Like,
so I'm sitting there. Just feed me your beliefs and your whatever. And so, but this was something that got brought up in this moms group a lot because most of these curriculums were by Christian women geared towards women who were moms staying home. That's how they were designed. And I would just sit there and it kind of would make my blood boil. And I don't know that I had the awareness to think about why, but if we think about the timeline, I joined the end of 2016. I launched the Free Mama movement in 2017. So I'm in this season of hustle, basically. And I don't like that word. And I wasn't working, 10, 12-hour days, but I was working my tail off. When I was working, like it was all consuming and my mind was just a million. And so looking back, I think I felt unseen and I think I felt unappreciated because I know, and I'm trying to put myself in a previous version of myself's body and mind, but I felt like, wait a minute, I'm here. I'm feeding my kids just like you. I'm putting them to bed just like I'm doing all the things you're doing, but I'm also carrying this huge other load. And this is not a competition. Like I'm here to tell you, it's not a competition. But for where I was in that time and space, I think I needed a freaking gold star, Sarah. I think I needed someone to be like, wow, you're doing all that and more. And it was a little bit of a martyr thing because I was choosing it, but I don't think I would have been receptive to that woman in your church at that time. I think I would have literally been like, no, I don't need you to tell me that. I need you to pat me on the back and be like, get out there and go do it. That's where I was at. But this is why we can say, hindsight and whatever. But also, as cliche as it is, our lives have seasons. They just do. I've leaned in, I've leaned out, like they just do. And that was the season I was in now. But now where I'm at, I'm all about it. I'm like, are you kidding me? I've got my kids home all day, every day. We are together more than any other family I've ever met. If you know anybody else with their family more than me, let me know. But we lived in a box. We are literally all home all the time. We are together all the time as a family. And it's not what I grew up with. I went to school for 9 hours a day and then I couldn't wait to hang out with friends and do whatever. We're together all the time. Heavy responsibility, but also a privilege to have that level of influence, over who my children will become and what they will tell themselves and what they will think and believe and how they will treat people and what they will feel inspired to do. And yes, going back to the nutrition, what they eat, because I feel that is my soapbox these. I think what we put in our bodies and how we choose to move them is one of the greatest influences over how we will be able to live our life. And we get to do that on such a hands-on level, not a fleeting conversation. And so I don't feel badly for how I felt back then because that was where I was, but I also can receive that message in such a different way now, having kind of seen and lived both sides of it. Impact is impact. I think at the end of the day, impact is impact.
And the living proof that name of the podcast is Unreasonable Autonomy, right? Like, it is so fascinating to sit with entrepreneurs like you and to realize once their choice, their ability to choose, their autonomy increases to a certain point, where does their energy go? You did not have capacity to tackle the food thing back in 2014. I mean, you just didn't, kind of thing. And so I always so fascinated where people feel called when they have worked so hard to increase their choice and their freedom, using your words. And I am fascinated by your experience in that moms group, because how interesting that it was on the precipice of you building a movement of women who feel unseen in the world of business and online and whatever. That, do you ever wonder if it just was in preparation of like, these women need a space and they need someone to cheer them on and someone to say, go after it, and someone to love them when they fall. And like, I'm just fascinated by that coincidence of timing.
I would have to ponder that. I think, because I have thought about, I'm really known for the community that I've built because it's awesome. And I love it so much. And I love these people. And I definitely, can acknowledge my influence on the community, but I am not the community. The community stands on its own. And I am proud to be the leader of it and have, kind of put those values in early on. I actually think it's a sadder story has influenced my community. And it is that I never really felt a part of one. And that goes back probably to middle school as well. I was in middle school during the days where people would like three-way call each other, where one person was silent and get the other person to say something not kind. It was nasty. Girls at my middle school were so mean to each other. So I ended up leaving that school. I hated it. I went to an all-girls high school, which I actually loved, to no fault of my high school. I also never felt like I belonged because I was very insecure in high school. Very. So I had my dance. It was a very competitive dance team. We were went to nationals and did all that. And so I had friends, but it's hard to have a true sense of community when you are not even being authentically yourself. And I was really in a stage of life where I just wanted people to like me. So I was a very unreliable chameleon. I just shape-shifted with who I thought people wanted me to be, what I thought would make people like me, what I thought would make boys like me. I found very validating at that time, which is so ironic because I feel like we hear about these sad girls who did not have a positive father figure out gallivanting and doing these things. And I do have such a great dad. So that was interesting. But I have spent quite a bit of time trying to think about where all that insecurity came from. And I haven't quite pinpointed it, but it was pretty bad. I was very insecure. And so that was difficult. And then I went to college and I was very confident in classes as a college student, but I joined a sorority and I always felt on the outside of this sorority. And I still do, if I'm just being 38 years old honest, I still will see a gaggle of girls from my age from the sorority that they still go get together. They still go have trips and now their kids go and it still feels like a dagger. I've definitely, it doesn't bring me to tears like it used to. Now it's like a little like pin poke in the heart. But I think it's one of those things where I always just wonder, I'm like, was it me? Was it them? Was it the wrong group? What was it that I never felt like I belonged and I never felt included. And I was discluded, sometimes openly. And so I had these experiences that I still have a really great group of core girlfriends. What's interesting is that I was nominated while I was studying abroad, by the way. So I was literally out of the country, could not vouch for myself. I was nominated for the vice president of membership for Panhellenic. Now, if you were never in Greek life and you're listening to this, you're like, those are a lot of words and I don't know what that means. It meant I ran Rush. I ran sorority recruitment for my college. So you cannot identify with a sorority. You are basically on an island by yourself. Everyone hates you. You have to pick all the rules. And also it was one of the hardest, still, I'm almost 40. It is one of the hardest things I've ever done. And without a doubt, it is the experience of my youth that prepared me for entrepreneurship more than anything else that I've ever done. I learned how to run meetings. I learned how to manage conflict. I had to do public speaking. I had to do actual contract. We had like a binding agreement through the laws and like we had all these things. It taught me how to be a grown-up. And I am still super close with my Greek advisor. I see her every time I go out to San Diego. She's met my whole family. I've hung out with her family. Like, she was so supportive. And I mean, really one of their, maybe not the first mentor, my dance teacher growing up and my coach, they were mentors as well, but really kind of that bridged that gap between childhood and adulthood. She was a very pivotal figure in my life. She is one of a handful of people that I mentioned in my first book that I wrote in 2018 that sort of breathed life into me before I even knew what I was capable of. We need those people. We need those people throughout our life that see us before we see us. And they tell us what we're capable of, and that they tell us these things. And so that we start to go, wait, like, am I a leader? Like, can I do that? And there's been a handful of people in my life that just shaped me so much through their belief. They gave me permission to pursue more for myself. And she's one of those people. But those, I really think that like middle school, high school, college, and the way that I felt so alone. And like, I didn't have people to share with the good things, the bad things, all of these things influenced the way I design my community, because we are not like that. We are not too cool for anybody. The word that people often use when they come either to my in-person events or even talking about like our Facebook group is safe. They feel safe. They feel like they can be themselves, which is the opposite of who I was in high school. I was always trying to be somebody else or just who I thought people wanted me to be. I mean, the moms group in Texas absolutely filled something in me very real that I needed during that space and time in my life. But whether or not it influenced my community, I'd have to think more about that for sure. I'm sure it didn't have a negative impact. It also probably wasn't the catalyst that made it so important to me.
Yeah. I mean, it is so much deeper than that.
Oh, yeah.
I'm grateful we dove into that question so that you talk about that experience with Rush Week. That gives me an absolute attack in my heart.
It's horrifying.
I mean, and huge name drop to Liz Benny, because I know she is one of those people who has shaped you in that realm. And I would say, wow, girl, like, you've come full circle, because even in the way that I hopefully tried to do justice with introducing you and talking about what I admire, how you show up is so predictable in the safest sense, right? And I mean that in like a Disney sense, right? Like a very good, safe word that I know when I show up here, I know what I'm going to get from you. Right? I know when we have conversations, I know who you are, and I know you'll be honest, and I know you'll call out stuff if needed. Like, you have really conquered that monkey on your back, right?
You definitely tied it up with a bow. That's for sure. I don't know that I've consciously sat and thought that my biggest challenge in high school is the exact juxtaposition of where I am really as a result of creating the Free Mama movement. I definitely grew when I started freelancing. That was when I really started tapping into being courageous, which is now something I exercise with frequency. And that was very new for me. I was very risk averse, even though my dad was an entrepreneur. And I have some really funny entrepreneurial stories as a child. I didn't go to college thinking I was going to own a business like that. That wasn't the dream for myself. I fell into it really more as a calling and a solution to a problem. I want to be home with my kids. And so I definitely can see how I started changing with freelancing. And clearly that needed to happen to get to the next level of building the Free Mama. But the last decade of experiences, no doubt, have led me to a place where I feel pretty good in my own skin. I know who I am. And like you said, I think most people who meet me know who I am too. And yeah, one of the biggest compliments I think I've ever been given was when someone told me I met her. I think it was at Free Mama Live. It might have been our very last one. And she met me. And sometimes people get emotional, which I never, ever take for granted, because I absolutely remember you mentioned Liz. I remember the first time I met Liz, I thought I was going to poop my pants. I literally thought I was going to die. I just was so nervous and excited and grateful and all the things. So I never take it for granted when someone looks visibly shook to meet me. Yeah. And I remember she's like, oh, you're just the same. You're like the same as you are online. And I'm like, woo, what a concept. I'm like, yes, I am. I am. But you probably know this too, Sarah. Not everybody is. Not everybody is. Who you meet on the internet is who you are, who you see online. So that is truly one of the greatest compliments of my life, is that I'm authentically me, and I like me, even if I'm not always a good mom.
That's
We're doing our best.
And do you have a hard stop, or do you have 5 more minutes?
No, I have 5 more minutes. Although I really do want to come back, because I really wanted to talk about aging. I was so excited for that conversation, but we went.
I have a bridge into just starting a discussion. And if you're open, I will absolutely bring you back to talking about it.
No, it's totally up to you. However you want to do it.
Okay.
I'm down for whatever you want to do.
Respectful of your time. So, okay. Well, yes, we will say goodbye to the Lauren Golden of the unreliable chameleon phase, as you put it, right? And
Yes.
those great compliments brought that to light. So this is going to feel like a really massive shift. So you were sitting there talking about how, look, the system is broken. The things we're trying to fix shouldn't even be political. And you don't have to worry about being political. We talked all about Trump with Cody Jefferson. It was great and dynamic and fun and all the things. So we can dive into
whatever. That to him and Josh.
Josh is going to be on here in a couple of weeks.
I'm sure.
It's going to be good. I'm really excited. But something that came to mind as you were talking about how the system has just destroyed attention spans and destroyed, kids' confidence, and TikTok's getting banned and then not, and then all the things that are going on in this current, January 23rd is what today is, 2025. So you guys can reference it in the future. Something that I am dying to hear what you would say is, what has been the standard that the world has given women about aging, and how do you plan to age?
Okay, so I thought about this, and much like the rest of our conversation, I don't have all the answers. I just have my thoughts and what I've noodled. And what I also thought about is, I give myself permission to change my mind, because I am at a really weird age. Yeah. I am at a really weird age where I'm clearly in my crunchy granola, hippie, make our own sourdough bread. So I'm a pretty natural girl. I work out. I'm actually running my first half marathon this weekend. I did a year of weight training. I've always been very active, but not always very healthy. I was a child of the 80s. So I grew up not eating well. Not that everybody in the 80s didn't, but this is certainly the rise of convenient foods is what I grew up with. And my mom was not a good cook. She didn't really know how to cook. I still would say I'm not a very good cook, but I see the value in making your own food and cooking from scratch. And, so I'm learning, but it's not something I like. It's not something I enjoy. I think people think oh, she must like cooking. Nope. I like the byproduct of cooking. I like eating and I'm doing what's in it. I am in a stage of life where, and again, this comes with privilege. So again, an online business equals freedom. We are organic. We are grass-fed. We are these are things that are really high on my priority scale right now, and have been for a while. But now that we're out of the RV and back in a home, it's just easier to facilitate some of these things and teach these things to my kids. And so these are all things I care a lot about. And so something I think about with frequency is how much raising 3 babies and growing a 7-figure business in my early 30s gave me wrinkles, a lot of them on my forehead. And I don't like the way that they look, Sarah. I don't like the way that they look at all. But do you know what else I don't like? I don't like the idea of eating grass-fed beef that is more expensive and pasture-raised eggs that are more expensive and organic produce, and then going and injecting toxins into my face. I can't get there. And it's hard because it is hard to look in the mirror and see yourself start to look different. And it starts to happen fast. I don't know how old you are, or if you even want to, how old are you?
I'm 42.
42. Okay. It seems like it's happening fast. I'll be 39 in a couple months. So then I've got the big 4-0. And I will tell you, since we've talked so much about my parents today, I am thrilled about my 40s. My dad, my whole life, I remember talking about, he always said, my 40s were my favorite decade besides the one I'm in right now. He has said that since his
Oh.
40s. He loved his 40s because his kids were still home, but they were more financially secure than they were before. They could leave us. We were like little people. They could actually go do things. They were out of the butt wiping stage. They were out of the, potty training and the hard part that kind of comes, the childcare. Well, I guess my mom stayed home, but you know what I mean? Like they were kind of out of that. We're like just starting that season, by the way. My husband and I didn't do New Year's resolutions this year. I did more and less lists. I want more of this and less of this. And one of the things I said I wanted more of was date nights. And so now that we're in a home, we're not in an RV, my oldest is turning 13, we can leave for a few hours and they're not going to kill each other. They're going to be fine. And it's life-changing. And I just want to tell anybody out there, if your kids are younger, hang on, because I remember when I was in my full-time job before I started freelancing, I was the youngest. And so my kids were babies, because then I left and everybody else had like teenagers. And I remember all of them being like, oh, you think this is hard? Just wait till they're teenagers. And I still think about those comments because first of all, it's very discrediting for the season you're in. No season of parenting is easy. Like it all comes with hardship. So like it still kind of makes me roll my eyes. And now that my kids are getting to that age, there are things that are harder. Absolutely. There are things that feel bigger, right? Mm-hmm. It's not the physical demands. It's more like, oh my gosh, they're turning into people and I only have like 6 years left. And like, it's those things and like life choices. And like, so I understand the sentiment, but the concept isn't incredibly helpful. Anyway, I'm way off track now. Long story short,
it's not a competition. Why do women?
It's not a competition. No, it's not a competition. Okay, it's not a competition. So anyway, we are now doing date nights on Thursdays, which is absolutely fantastic. It is a new level of freedom for sure. I don't even know what got me onto that, but our kids are getting older. I am too getting older. You start to look in the mirror and you're like, I am getting older.
Yeah.
It was not, I could go look on my Facebook or my Instagram to when it was. Sarah, it was within the last few months that I got my first gray hair. Now, a few years ago, I wouldn't have even noticed this. But when we left on our RV trip, I decided that I didn't want to be someone who, again, the toxic part of getting highlights and what I'm like, I don't want to do this. But also we were traveling for a year. I was getting extra crunchy granola. I've also been highlighting my hair since like 8th grade.
Yes.
Freshman year, like my whole life. I'm like, it's expensive. It's time consuming. It's not really good for you. It does make you look really good. So that part is hard because you're kind of like, my face looked a little brighter, but you can see the roots, they're just like all the way to here now. And it's difficult because I had one gray hair and now a few months later, I have many gray hairs. They are all over the place. So we have these two lines and these two lines, and they're only getting deeper. And we have this huge, grown out, we're not actually as blonde as we thought we were. And then I'm coming with the grays. And so there's this truth of like looking in the mirror and reconciling what's happening. But then there's this excitement about your 40s and date nights. And like, it's always been positioned as in my life, because it's interesting. I think you asked like society, society has women with lip fillers and fake eyelash. Like there's a lot of that doesn't appeal to me personally anyway.
Yeah.
Because of who you have heard that I am at this stage in my life. It doesn't feel truthful to me and like who I am. So that stuff never appealed to me. But then there's like the maintenance package of the whole beauty industry. And that one feels tempting because it is hard to watch yourself change in that way. It's been difficult. It's difficult when I look and I see those things. So I have been really pursuing, and I have nothing to report yet, but I have been pursuing some of the more natural ways to, let's say, age gracefully. Because I also think, so there's the crunchy granola, like I'm in that stage, so I don't like the toxic aspect, but there's also the, my mom chose a different route. My mom's 70 and she just let herself, she has the most beautiful like silver hair, which I hope that I get. It is like gorgeous. Her hair well into her mid 60s. So she was blonde like up until her mid 60s. And I'm like, that is a lot of highlighting appointments. Like I don't know that I want to choose that for myself. My mom has also chosen other things to do. And my mom looks amazing. So if anything, there's this temptation of like, that's available. But I also, as we've established, I'm very cognizant of what's the message I want for my girls. I have 2 daughters and it is this constant friction. So that's why I started this by saying I give myself permission to change my mind. But where I'm at right now, Sarah, is I'm not going to color my hair, although I have an appointment next month, and I am going to tell her that it's bothering me. I want her to know, like, these grays are bothering me, but I also don't know that I want to color my hair. And I kind of just want to see what she says. So I'll report back. Have you ever heard of frownies?
Oh, yes.
Do you know?
Oh, yes.
Okay. So I am a frownies user, and it definitely, I think, is keeping me where I'm at. So they're not getting worse, but I wish I would have started about 5 years earlier. I'm fairly consistent, although I woke up this morning and realized I did not put them on, but I also had 2 presentations yesterday, one last night, and I think it just threw me off my routine. So I'm fairly consistent. If you're not familiar with frownies, I'm trying that. I'm also getting an ad a day about like face yoga.
What?
Do you get it? That's because I click on all the crunchy granola stuff, Sarah. If it is about baking bread, running half marathons, eating organic produce, or not using Botox, I'm clicking on it.
Okay,
so
not
there
using
is
Botox one. And
I don't know if the video is going anywhere, but there's like all these weird, like stretchy skin things that you can do. And then like relaxing your mind. Anyway, so not a steady adopter of face yoga, but really contemplating it and using some of the free resources. So I'm at a stage where I'm like, I've got the energy to put into this. I technically have the money, but so I guess that goes more in the frownies department. But it's like, I'm going to sit instead of looking for the convenient, how do I make this aging thing stop? I'm kind of sitting with it, and it is uncomfortable. The gray hairs is what really started to get me, because once the one goes, they really start flying. And I'm like, what is happening? And again, you look in the mirror and you see yourself, but you don't see yourself in a way. So it's been really interesting. So I, like most things in my life, to answer your question, I'm going to do it my own way. I'm going to try to do it in a way that feels in alignment with my values. But again, like many things, I really feel, whether it's true or not, I have to acknowledge that because of my news feed and because of my worlds, I really feel in a minority. And that's hard. It's just hard to feel like you're not doing what other people are doing, which sounds kind of back to high school, Lauren, but that's my truth. So I'm going to do it my way, and I'm going to sit with the discomfort, and I may change my mind on something at some point. But right now I feel in integrity with my choices, and I feel excited to welcome my 40s. I really do. I love the age of my kids right now. They still drive me nuts every now and again, for sure. But like it is very freeing when they are like their own little independent people, and it's very fun. So we're in a they're 12 about to be 13, 10 about to be 11, and Audrey just turned 8. And it is so fun. Talk to me again in 10 years and or 11 years, we'll talk about turning 50. That one could be a totally different conversation. But right now I feel a little uncomfortable about my physical changes. But also the last thing I'll say is I'm in the best physical shape of my entire life. Like I am crushing it. Like I mentioned, I'm about to go run a half marathon. I've never been a runner. I was never a runner. I've always been active, but I've been a yogi. I was a dancer, never a runner. I was in a physical fitness program this past year that was very like strength driven. And when I was in a cut, she said, you need to go jog, because I was in the RV. I didn't have access to any equipment, like, stairs or an elliptical, whatever. So she's like, you got to go jog. And I was like, I hate you. That was literally what I told her. I'm like, because I have no filter. And I'm like, I'm not jogging. And I remember the first day we were in Texas in the RV, and the first time that I did it, and I could not run for 20 minutes without stopping and walking. And that was less than a year ago. And now I'm running a half marathon. So we are so capable. And I do feel passionately, another soapbox, that at our age, this midlife is you've got to start putting in the reserves, because then our bodies are just going to start depleting. So you've got to prioritize your health. Like we got to build the muscles. We got to build the strength. Absolutely. Because it's just going to get harder as we, perimenopause, menopause, and beyond. So, I do feel passionately about that.
And the conviction behind it, what I love is, number one, I have permission to change my mind. Second, my driving principles are that I've got to put things in reserves, right? And second, I've got to, I will be driven by not using toxic measures at this point. I'll just put that in quotes, right? Because you have permission to change your mind or whatever. And I think that the refreshing thing is, and we're just going to be blunt here, you and I have both been in positions and in businesses in which you are the face of the movement and in which you are speaking on stage and you are sharing profile pictures and you are doing those things. And I will never forget when I was sitting in college and I was studying to be a music educator, and you had to video yourself teaching like a band class, right? And then they would watch it and critique it. And an individual in the room in front of the entire 25, 30 music ed students in there watched my video and said, the only reason they listen to you is because they think you're hot. And that has haunted me. And when I was your age, wow, I'm such a matriarch in this conversation, but when I was in my 40s, I started to have this fear that I was losing my leverage because I was losing my face or all the whatever you want to point to. And then all of a sudden, you start to even think that, and somehow Big Brother knows, and all of a sudden there's Ozempic, these GLP-1. I mean, we're saying it, right? There's this kind of thing. And like you said, there's Botox in there. And I live in Utah, and I-15 is covered in plastic surgery and tummy tucks and makeovers. And
very much
and all the things in a way that it really
where
shouldn't
I'm
be.
from, that is also in Kansas City, the area I'm from is very manicured. Very. Okay. Yes. And so it's not so much like that where we are now, but we're a little more beach bummy now. But where I'm from, yes, very manicured is what I was used to seeing.
And I think the shocking part is, and you actually brought this up, the shocking part is you look at the person who raised you and how they aged, and then you look at the people you are raising and you are somewhat torn, right? My mother did not dye her hair a day in her life, got Parkinson's at my age, and boxed until 3 days before she died, right? Wow. She saw her body as a vessel to do good. She was spice and everything nice. You will love her. Love it. If you ever meet her, right? Before she passed away, I just started to really notice that her definition of aging gracefully was being about people and getting out of her own way. She was magic at it. And so I really judged myself as I was turning 39 and then 40, and she was still alive at that time, but I was judging myself because I wanted to change stuff. I wanted to be thinner. I didn't love the spots that were coming, and I like all the things. And I was like, she taught me so much better, right? And then you get into this dialogue of, well, I want to be a vessel, and like, what if I'm 40 pounds lighter because of GLP-1? Won't I be able to run better and be with my grandkids better? And it's this just,
it's mind.
It is crazy. And so I don't even
know. You do my verbal processing. I mean, this is how it's what it sounds like in my mind, you know, and I feel really lucky because I don't feel obsessive over it. It's not something I'm thinking about in the middle of my day. And I know that for some people that is not their reality. So that is difficult. And I feel grateful that I'm not. It's those moments where I'm getting ready for bed at night and I'm washing my face and I'm like, oh my gosh. I really want to empathize with you and your story about somebody telling you, you know, something happened because you were attractive. I have had those fleeting thoughts of like, you used to turn heads, like the you used to, you know, of like, you used to get cackled, like, you know, you. Something else I've thought about quite a bit recently, which actually cracks me up. I used to get complimented on my skin all the time. People are like, oh my God, what do you use on your skin? Do you know what I used on my skin in high school? Sea breeze. Talk about toxic, like straight up alcohol, like blue, whatever. Like that was it. I would use that that was me washing my face and taking my makeup off. Horrible. I'm both so eternally grateful for this time and the world that we're living in. And also like, really? Because I feel like I could have thrived in a different millennium.
We will not link it in the show notes. How about that? We will not.
I used Sea Breeze and people would be like, oh my gosh, your skin looks great. And now I'm like, I have like a nice skincare routine. I haven't gotten compliments on my skin in a really long time. And it starts to give you that like, so anyway, I really can empathize because it's hard. Those are the thoughts that pop in those moments that make you question if your current choices are right. You know what I mean? They make you doubt. But one of the things that we do, you know, in mindset coaching in the Free Mama is the reframe. I literally have a journal that's called the Rewrite Your Thoughts Journal. And so something I have evolved to be able to do that I'm sure you have too, Sarah, is we can notice the thoughts and separate ourselves from them and then choose what we want to do with that information. And that is not something that I had the maturity nor the skill set to do, 10 years ago. So
yes. And that is what will make your 40s the greatest decade of your life until you're 50, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like that is how you will carry on
Yeah.
your dad's impact. Well, I am just so grateful for you. I am so grateful for you in this conversation. And there's a million other things that we just have to dive into in every sense of the word. In traditional format for Unreasonable Autonomy, I'm going to ask you 4 or 5 just really random rapid fire light questions in order for our people to connect with you a little bit. And again, just a huge thank you. Thank you for who you are. Man.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
I just feel better after sharing this space with you.
Are we all going to go do some face yoga after this? Again, it's TBD.
It's just going to show up on my feed because of this conversation. So I'm excited. Okay, so here are 4 questions for you. What is your favorite sports team?
Go Chiefs.
Go Chiefs. Is this a Taylor Swift thing?
I'm from Kansas City. I liked the Kansas City Chiefs before Taylor Swift liked the Kansas City Chiefs. And also, with that being said, I do have a T-shirt that says "Go Taylor's Boyfriend." Yeah, I'm from Kansas City.
That's fair. I should have made that connection. Okay, that's fair. All right. What is a bucket list item that you haven't done yet?
Oh, hot air balloon.
Ooh, I like.
Yeah.
I like.
Yeah.
Okay.
I tried to plan it for a retreat that I did last September, which I actually believe I invited you to, and we just could not make it work. But that I would really like to do it with my husband as well. But frankly, it's one of those that I just want to do it. I don't really care where or who it's with. So yes, that is on my list for sure.
I respect it. Okay. 2 more questions is big picture. What is next for you? What does the next 90 days to 12 months look like?
90 days. Oh gosh. I came into 2025 with 0 travel plans. If you know anything about me, you know that I know it's kind of like being trapped in a room with no lights on and trying to figure out where to go. And that is such an important value for my husband and I. Clearly, you guys heard we traveled in an RV for a year. Last year, I built my year around my in-person retreats and where I would be. So like for me to have no travel plans on a calendar heading into a year is I literally don't know the last time that's happened. It's been at least a decade, but it's such a value for us that is kind of where we started. So when we did our first Thursday night date night, we really kind of had to sit down and talk about it, but we're actually reversing back from a year and a half from now. So I turn 40, not this year, but next year. And for like 10 years, I've been telling my husband that I want to go on an African safari for my 40th birthday. So it's not planned yet, but it's like out there and there's like an itinerary and it's like in the works, but that's like a really big trip. So then we're kind of like backtrapping. So I have a cousin who plays football for the University of Wyoming and they're playing San Diego State this year. And so we don't have the date yet. We're waiting on the calendar, but Justin's sister moved to San Diego. I went to college in San Diego. My 2 soul sister best friends in the world live in San Diego. And so I told Justin, I'm like, if I do nothing else this year, I'm going to that like I'm going to San Diego. I'm like, I don't care if the family goes. I don't care if we drive. I don't care if I fly. I'm going to go. And he's like, cool. And since then, now we have like 5 things on the calendar for this year. But that's really the big thing in my life is I build my business around my life, not the other way around. I don't just decide things for my business and then hope that the things that I want to do as a person or a wife or a mom happen. I always start with that infrastructure first, which is really important to me. So that's kind of what I know. As far as the next 90 days, it's so funny because I mentioned a couple times, I'm running a half marathon, which was like crazy for me. It's now this weekend, so it's not even the next 90 days. But I told my husband, like something I'm very known for and probably one of my greatest skill sets that I feel very, very grateful for because it has served me very well in this life is I am incredibly disciplined. And so when I set a target or a goal, nothing else really exists except like the things in maintenance mode, right? Like obviously, I'm running my family and I'm running my business and I'm serving, I'm in fulfillment mode, but like I get laser focused on my goal. And so I've been really focused on, we had a relaunch in my business this week. I mentioned the masterclass that I was doing, and then I have this running. And so it's like nothing else. I get blinders for my goal. So I'm like, I don't know, Sarah, what do the next 90 days? Ask me next week. Next week, I might know what the next 90 days look like.
I love it.
But for now, I'm in it. I'm in the end of my 90-day goal sprint right now.
I love it.
That was probably a horrible answer to a really simple question.
I actually really respect it because I think it creates a frame on how you frame your life. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Love it.
Brilliant.
It works for me.
Yes. And I have deep respect for your intention in doing it. Here's your very last question. What is one book everybody should read? Toughest question.
The Untethered Soul.
Oh!
The Untethered Soul. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Have you read it?
No, but
what?
Everybody I've interviewed is like, that's the worst question. And they say,
are you kidding? No, that is the most life-changing book that I have ever read. I read it at a very difficult time in my life. And I have since read the other two books by the author as well, which are fantastic. The Surrender Experiment and then Life Untethered. I have recommended it to everyone I coach in my community. It is a very spiritual book, but I do not believe it is in conflict with any one faith unless you are a more closed-minded individual. I do not believe that the way that it is presented conflicts with anything. I think the author does a really great job of interweaving spirit and soul and different language that many of us Homo sapiens use for a very similar concept. It is beautiful. And the gift that it gave me, Sarah, is the gift of space. So we talked about thoughts a lot today. We talked about mindset. It does a really great job of separating who we are. I know who I am. I'm talking about my soul. I am not my words. I am not my thoughts. I am not my feelings. I'm not even this body. We talked about aging. Talk about a good way to put a bow on this episode. These things are all fleeting. They're all temporary. Daphne was having really bad cramps earlier this week. Our cycle synced up, which is amazing. And I kept she was almost in tears. And that's how I was as a teenager. So I had so much empathy for her of like, I've been there. I know what that feels like. And I just kept telling her over and like, this is temporary. Like you might have a hard day, but like you are not going to feel this way forever. And that book gave me that space. So it's the space to not overreact when my kids tick me off. Now I'm still in practice. I don't do this perfectly, but when things happen in the world, when things happen in my business, when things happen in my body. I remember one day I was having the worst stomach ache ever. And I gave myself the same mantra. I'm like, this is temporary. This is temporary. I am not this pain. I am the one aware that I am experiencing this pain. And so you've got to check out the book because it creates this space for us to go through life with more peace. We're not bumping up against everything rugged and rough. It's space and peace and yummy. It's a dense read, not like a textbook dense, but like there's just so much. I remember I highlighted pretty much the entire thing. But yeah, without hesitation, The Untethered Soul, it is the book that has created lasting change in my life. You know, there's lots of business books and other cool things that I could say that are definitely like great, but you could read the Cliff's Notes and you'd be fine. Yeah, I'm going with The Untethered Soul. All your other guests are wrong. No, just kidding.
I just was shocked. I was unprepared. Oh my word.
Closely followed by Start an Online Business and The Free Mama by Lauren Golden. No, I'm just kidding.
I say yay.
Just kidding.
It's brilliant. Well, and if this does not tie it all in a bow, I just have to think that your peace will not come from declaring, I am a good mom, but rather I am a good soul. Right?
Well, thank you. And just being a good mom, right?
Yes.
I'm just going to go try to be a good mom. I don't need to say it.
Yeah.
I think our action in the world speaks louder than any words that we need to profess anyway. So I'm going to try to be a good mom. That feels much more aligned.
Yes. I will take that to the bank. I love that so much. A huge thank you to you for giving us more of your time than we even asked for. I am so grateful for the conversation, for the wisdom, for the clarity, and especially just that I just know how you show up. And this went exactly how I hoped, just in the sense of the value and perspective you would bring to us. So thank you again for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Unreasonable Autonomy podcast. If you loved this episode, my guests and I would love to hear about it. Go to the show notes to reach out and let me know what resonated with you or what topics or guests you want to hear in the future. I am here to create for you. Look, I deeply admire your commitment to pushing boundaries and going after an unreasonable life. Keep dreaming big taking bold steps and expecting the unreasonable. For more, go to the show notes to dive deeper into the conversations that will keep you going. Thanks for being here.